All right, welcome everyone. We have 81 participants. That's awesome. So Josh, welcome to our Executive Speaker Series. This is an opportunity for us to engage with people like you who have had a great career coming out of the Graziadio Business School, and not only share your journey, but also share your insights, what you've learned, and how, what you've learned about what you do, but also what you learned about, how to be successful in business. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Josh Taub. He is the Chief Operating Officer at Activision. We're delighted that you're here with us to share your knowledge and wisdom. And yeah, so I don't know if you have any preliminary words before we get started.
First of all, just thanks so much, Nelson, for having me. And it's a pleasure to be back at the university. And it's great to talk to you all. And happy Friday. And hope everybody's looking forward to an excellent weekend. And please ask questions. We'll try and make it as interactive as possible. And again, really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so I'll keep tracking the chat. You can ask any questions at any time. If I see they're kind of relevant to the flow, I'll include them. Otherwise, I'll keep them for the end. But we do want to make this as interactive as possible in terms of, I know there's a lot of students in the audience, and students are not students. If you see the opportunity to ask a question that provides insights for you and for others, just do not hesitate. So, Josh, let's start with your history. I'd like to just go straight to the point. Let's go back in time. Tell us about this moment in your life where you graduate from Pepperdine's MBA program. So what happens next? And then what leads you all the way to coming to Activision and your executive roles at Activision?
So in 1999, I was working for the E&J Gallo Winery. I had been with them about 7 years. And in undergrad, I studied English and pre-law. And I had decided that I wanted to move toward business and really continue to grow my business career. And so I decided I needed an education that was more formal, and went back to school. And so while I was working for the Gallo Winery, I enrolled at Pepperdine's Graziadio School of Business. I went to school at night. I was working full time. I had a new wife. I had a young child. I moved into the first home I lived in, and was taking classes all over Southern California, Orange County, LA, the San Fernando Valley. And the education really matched my lifestyle because I was on the road for work a bunch in Southern California. And so I spent 2 years going through that program and graduated in 2001. And in 2001, I was at business.com, which was the first transition I had made, which was leaving consumer products to go into technology. And it was at the beginning of it was toward the end of the internet boom. And we were really going to make a search engine for business to business. It was started by a company called eCompanies that raised $500 million in 2000. It was run by Jake Weinbaum, who was a Disney bright child, and Sky Dayton, who had founded Earthlink. And they had begun to start a number of companies and had one of the first incubators in the market. And so business.com was one of those companies. As business.com started to slow down a little bit, I got a call from a friend who I had worked with at Gallo, and he had said this company called Vivendi Games was hiring, and he thought I'd be a good candidate for a role there after I'd graduated. So I interviewed there, I accepted a role, my second child was born, and I started in a career in video games. And it was beginning something I really found that was a ton of entertainment, a great business, and had a huge growth trajectory ahead of it. So I spent 2 or 3 years at Vivendi Games, and was recruited from Vivendi to go to Mattel. At Mattel, I was hired to run their Toys R Us business, which was their second largest customer. And we had a customer business team that was about 20 people. The business was about $300 million at that time. And we built it and grew it for the next 2 to 3 years. 2005, 2006, my boss at Vivendi, who had gone to Activision, called me and said, "Hey, we have a role for you and we'd like to bring you over to Activision." And so I picked up the call because she was a wonderful woman, someone I respected tremendously. And 16 years ago, I went to Activision. I went to work for her. I've been there ever since. And I've had a number of roles across the company. I've been a sales executive, which is where I started. I built the global supply chain at the company. I moved in to run business units with Guitar Hero and start the Skylanders business. Then I became the CFO, and now I'm the Chief Operating Officer with responsibilities for the financials and the operations of the company.
Wow, well, what an interesting journey. So I picked up on one thing that, which is, the importance of relationships, of nurturing your relationships, of nurturing, those who oversee you, because they are your best reference.
Well, and I think it's even deeper than that, Nelson. I think it's everybody you work with. I think, you do your best work every day and you influence the people who you work with, who work for you, frankly, because one day you may be working for them, and who you work for. And that commitment, you never know, especially today where people are going to wind up. And I have friends and colleagues all over the world today in all different types of companies. And you see the networks are super important to the longevity of your career.
Great. It's a very nice insight. Career-wise, in terms of sort of the industries you've been in, so do you see any overlaps that help support your growth between toys and games? And we're kind of talking about the same thing in a way, but I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, I think at the core, they're at the basis of entertainment for different ages, different shapes and sizes, but it is an entertainment business. There are similar points of purchase, or at least there were 15, 16 years ago. And when you think about that, it's, Toys R Us, Walmart, Target, and globally, Asda and Carrefour and others were the same place people would go buy toys and games. And so your relationships, again, that you establish with buying teams and with analysts and with financial people are really important because they show up across different categories at different times. Then you've got event level launches. And so when you launch a toy line, a Barbie or a Hot Wheels line in the fall, or you launch a new Call of Duty, it's an event level marketing effort. And you want everyone in the world to know about it in your target audience. And so that similarity is amazing. Now, where they differ is gaming has evolved to be completely digital. Right, it's become a digital ecosystem, and I think that's why games have gotten younger and younger, because they're easier and easier for people to interact with. And so I would say that gaming over time has taken share from the toy industry, and has become a real growth industry where toys has been more of a static industry and less of growth.
Great. Okay, so let's jump to our main topic of the day, which is strategy. What you know about strategy. So, of course, this is related to the industries you work for, but it could apply in general. So how do you develop a strategy given all the environmental dynamics, for example, technological progress, sometimes regulations that are constantly changing the industry landscape? Can you provide some examples related to your answer on this?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think strategy is an ongoing process. And so the way our company's structured is every year we submit a 3-year plan that is everything from our product strategy and the products we're going to release, the platforms we're going to release them on, the people we need to create them, the costs we're going to incur. And we roll that all up into a 3-year financial plan and a 3-year product plan that goes from our division, which is Activision, in the divisions of Activision Blizzard, up through the executive layer of Activision Blizzard King, and then to the board. And each year they're submitted to the board of directors and they're approved as the plan of record going forward. Now, there's a specific time that I'll talk about today for the last cycle, which started in about 2017. from 2006 to 2017, Call of Duty was an annual premium release that we launched a game. We sold a year worth of season pass at that point in time. We launched maps throughout the year, but it was really a product that started to decline the day you launched it. It had a meaningful holiday. It did about 80% of its volume in that 6-week period, and then about 20% for the next 10 months before you launched a new game. And it became apparent, and there's a question in the chat about, do you believe in the direction of video games is heading toward free to play? And I think it's important, as this was part of the evolution. So you saw free to play games really start off in mobile from 2010, 2012 to 2017. And you started to see it permeate into gaming with Fortnite and with the release of Fortnite. And so our strategy looked at how are we launching and how are we engaging our users? And instead of becoming a real business that's driven by a premium release once a year, we needed to evolve to a business that was driven by engagement, by people playing our games all year long, and by opening the funnel to as wide of an audience as possible. And so we set out to do two things. We set out to launch a mobile game, which was going to meaningfully increase the size of our audience and change the platforms we were on, as well as allow us to exist in a new geography because we didn't have a business yet in China. And we set out to look at our core console business and PC business with Call of Duty and look at how do we evolve free to play. And for those of you in the audience who play games, you know we launched Warzone about 2 years ago. Well, it was one of those times where you get strategy really right and also execution. And it doesn't happen every year, and we've made plenty of mistakes. So this is not a, hey, we always get it right kind of discussion. But in this instance, we did. And you know, if you look at our business in 2019 versus 2020 and 2021, what you'll see is a business that grew from 40 million monthly active users on Call of Duty to 125 million. So we tripled the size of our audience on a monthly basis. And then from a revenue standpoint, we grew from around $2 billion a year to around $4 billion a year. And for profits, we doubled our profits. And so we developed, after 15 years, an entirely new scale of Call of Duty by looking at business model, platform, geography, resources, and set out a plan that we've executed pretty well over the last 3 or 4 years.
Great. Well, that's a great segue into my next question. So you've kind of summarized how you strategize in this very dynamic environment. And one thing I tell my students, they'll probably be able to repeat this after a few weeks of class because I just hammer it into them. So I'd like your thoughts on this. Is that, and particularly when I talk about strategic innovation related to technology, I say it's very important to build a vision of where technology is headed before developing what I call in my class a digital strategy that's coherent with this vision. And then it's only then that investing in technology makes sense. So any thoughts about that? You know, you can contradict me or you can add to it, whatever you want. And then any insights again from examples from the real world or your own experience.
No, look, I think it's a great question. I think it's the right thing to drive into the students. There's no question that as you know, we go into this platform world, and you know, you think about it with Google and Facebook and Amazon and Microsoft, that these companies are growing to mega companies on the back of technology. I mean, on the back of cloud, on the back of platform and aggregating information. And so as you build scale, like we did over the last 24 months, you have to contemplate technology. Our concurrent user base went from 2 million to 10 million. The entire system would fall over if we did it without contemplating technology. The tools and creation elements of making a game require new development in order to make the best games. And you know, whether it's ray tracing that really dives into the quality of the light you're seeing in the game, or the thing that makes COD special at 60 frames a second, is all based on technology and technical superiority. And our CTO and that team and the engineers within each of the studios are super important to the success of the franchise and have to be one step ahead of the competition.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, and it's a fascinating industry because, right, because you have to think about content creation technologies, distribution technologies, and all of that is affecting your business and others in the industry. So, on that note, so Fernando's questions about whether the future of gaming is around free to play or not. Do you have a general vision on that? And I'll give you I'll give you your own, probably your own disclaimer that this may not be Activision's vision, but it's up to you how you want to.
Look, I think the answer, I think we touched on it a little bit, as you know, Fernando, you asked about launch and release DLCs throughout the year. I think what you're seeing in our business is we're providing a lot of free content out into the world today. Once people engage within the premium game, and in addition, we have 2 free-to-play games. We have Warzone and we have Call of Duty Mobile. And so we think that there are different business models for different products. We think there will continue to be a premium business in gaming. We think there will continue to be meaningful free-to-play landscapes. And then on other sides of our company, like Blizzard, we have World of Warcraft, which is a subscription-based business. And Fortnite, who's, you know, not our company, but has seen subscriptions start to become part of their business. So I think you're seeing a lot of different business models across different franchises, different products, and even within the same franchises, you're seeing different business models that appeal to different consumers.
Great. So let's broaden up a little bit further on the vision. And so I'm going to extend the conversation to not just talk about gaming, but other sectors, creative sectors of entertainment, media. So gaming is the largest sector in the industry, which is, you know, kind of an amazing thing to say. It's the biggest form of entertainment when you think about, you know, the revenues that it generates and the monetization that happens through gaming. So, I mean, any thoughts as to why? I mean, are you a gamer? Of course, you see a lot about, running a business as a CEO. You see a lot. You must have a lot of insight as to why that is. So, if you can share with us some of that, that'd be great.
I mean, the first and easiest answer is because games are just incredible. They are the most immersive form of entertainment. And they're with you wherever you want them. Any platform, anytime. You get to engage with your favorite intellectual property in the deepest way possible with your friends in social settings. It's incredible. And they only get more and more immersive and more fun to play. And so as technology, to your point earlier, as it opens up and gives you more and more capability, the games become more and more fun. And so I think that's the first piece at its cornerstone, is that the entertainment allows you to immerse in it in a major way. I think the second piece is that they are incredibly social. So, you know, you and I can hang up this call and with 100 people on the phone, and we could all go jump into a game of Warzone and be playing all together. And I think that, you know, that has a lot of magic to it. And we're on headsets and we're talking to each other, and, you know, we're together in a way that we're not together with any other form of entertainment. And then, you know, as platforms and technology change, you know, mobile phone gaming is only becoming more and more ubiquitous. As 5G comes, the game quality on mobile devices will become better and better. And you'll see gaming continue to grow over the next decade ahead. And then you've got things like augmented reality and virtual reality that are still in their infancy, but will provide even more immersive experiences, and you'll see it continue to grow there. So I think there are just so many different ways for it to grow that we're really just at the tip of the iceberg. And, you know, you and I, before we got on the call, we're talking about esports a little bit. And so we're into the sports world over the last, you know, 5 to 7 years, and that's growing in at its infancy. And so there are a lot of ways that people are now getting to engage in this IP that you've grown up with and you've loved, that you can't do with anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I love this answer because it also helps make the point about the importance of vision. Notice, I think for everyone who just heard this answer, notice the visionary components of this answer. I think 80% of it was about vision, even though my question was, why is gaming so entertaining, right? So, so great insight. So, well, on a personal note, given we just started talking about why gaming is so entertaining, what is your favorite game? Just came up in the Q and the questions here. So
So
interesting.
it's not out in the market right now, but it's Skylanders. And it's Skylanders for a very specific reason. It was the first time I became the GM of a business. And it was the most intimately I started when I started working with the developers. And I really thought that for me, it would be something where I got dragged along, but couldn't provide a ton of value. But what happened was we had a toy business that was integrated into the games. And the people who led the creation of it, a gentleman named Paul Ritchie and another one named Fred Ford, who were dear friends of mine, they were magical creators. And we upended two industries. We upended video games and toys simultaneously. And it was incredible. And the games were fun. The characters were amazing. I still have, the 8 original characters on my desk. And so it's just my favorite point in time. And then, of course, I got to say, I love Call of Duty because it's a ton of fun to play. A term we use is it's sweaty, it's fast, and it's intense. But that part of it is really enjoyable. And it's just at the highest quality of first-person shooters in the marketplace.
Great. Hey, so let's come back a little bit to strategy. And there was a question in the chat about Activision's competitive strategy, and for example, how it relates to EA. So let me in order to introduce that question to the audience, let me share in the screen a graph of the industry landscape and therefore also the competitive landscape that you're dealing with. So here we are. Any thoughts, reactions about what you see here?
So I think the first thing, if I'm in this group from a student base and you look in the corners of this chart, the largest segments of this chart, none of these companies existed 25 or 30 years ago. Okay, so think about that just for a minute and the trillions of dollars that these represent. By the way, there was never a $1 trillion company before the last 5 years. And so the first thing I see is opportunity for growth and platforms really taking a major stronghold in the market. Even as you go to the next size of circles, Samsung, competitor to Apple, Disney and Netflix, both with streaming services, Comcast in the cable business, Verizon, cell phone, AT&T, cell phone, T-Mobile, cell phone, right? So you're looking at this landscape of platform and delivery of content. You go into China with Tencent, who owns, a major segment of video gaming with a number of companies, Riot Games, and 40% of Epic with Fortnite. They own the Netflix of China or the equivalent. They own the Facebook of China equivalent. And so you're looking at these companies that really are about aggregating users and delivering content. And at its core, that's Activision Blizzard. And, whether it's Blizzard, King, or Activision, we all produce content to the broadest group of users with an intent to entertain them and engage them over long periods of time. And whether we do it through mobile phones or we do it through PC and our BattleNet client with our platform, or we do it through consoles, there's a meaningful opportunity for us to continue to deliver the best gaming content. And as a competitor, when I joined 2005, we were a $5 billion market cap. So we've grown 10, 12 fold over those 15, 16 years. And we continue to believe that growth over the next 10 to 15 is going to be even greater than the last 10 to 15. So
Great. Let's talk a little bit here about the purple area. And I
Okay.
don't know, can you see my
Yeah.
my mouse? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can see your mouse and, Activision, Blizzard, Nintendo. So
Zooming
go
in
ahead.
into that space. Any thoughts on Activision strategy, how it differentiates?
Yeah, so look, I think the first thing, so we'll take the first two that are next to each other, Activision and Nintendo. Nintendo produces great IP, but they produce great IP for their own platforms, right? They're on the Nintendo platform. We produce IP for all platforms. So then I'll go one to the left of Nintendo to EA. EA is predominantly licensed content. EA Sports from FIFA, NFL, NBA, etc. Star Wars, and a handful of other games. We are believers in our own IP. And so when you look at Call of Duty or Crash or Spyro or Candy Crush or World of Warcraft, we own all of that IP. Then you go to Epic, Valve, and Roblox, and you get into more platform behavior. So they all aggregate different content for a user base. And Valve does it on the back of Steam. Epic does it on the back of the Epic engine, where they have an engine and they have a PC launcher. And Roblox does it with the creation of content. But they're all platform based. And then as you get into the smallers, it's probably not worth mentioning at this point.
Great. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this one. And another interesting question that's very related to how Activision strategizes. How does your organization support creativity from your developers and choose how to invest in innovation? And before you answer, very quickly, Call of Duty Warzone is amazing, great concept, great product. Thank you. That's another comment. So that may help inspire your answer.
So Raphael, it's a great question. And at the core of the question is the most important piece, which is the people who create our content are professional athletes. They do incredible things, and our job is to really enable them to do those incredible things. And we're built on an independent studio model, which means, when I look at Activision, there's about 80% of our company is developers. So about 3,000 of the 4,000 employees are developers. Of those 80%, we have 8 studios in different parts of the US, Canada, and a little bit overseas, one in Shanghai and some new ones that are starting to pop up. Our job is to really give them the right direction of what is our strategy and how do we think the franchise needs to evolve on broad scope, and then for them to creatively deliver the best iteration of that. And we support them with all of the resources that a central company would, so marketing and hiring capability and culture and development of talent. But we also support them by partnering with them to make sure that they have all the latest and greatest information of the market, and to Nelson's point, where technology is heading and how they have to evolve, or if there's something new in the market, what does it look like and how do we think about it? But at its core, developers for us are the most important asset in the company. And we continue to build and grow. We hired more people in the last 12 months than we hired in the 3 years prior. And 95% of them were developers.
Right. So help me understand this a little bit further. So you say there's some kind of strategy that you ask your developers to implement. So is it a broad strategy that you apply to all your product lines and divisions, or is there some, or is it broad but then it's customized or tailored to each type of product? How does that work?
So I think at its core, there are certain parameters. There's a size and scale of the game. There are elements in a game that we'd like to exist. So in a traditional Call of Duty game, in the premium launch, there's a campaign, which is a single player experience that allows you to tell a story. Then there's multiplayer maps, which are competitive and player versus player, or PvP. And then there's a third mode. And that third mode tends to be different in each of the games we release. But within those, there's a time period, and there's a story, and there's new map development, and there's a new third mode, and there may be zombies, which is what Treyarch had worked through and launched, or there may be the development of a new 2v2 system, which is something we have released in the last 2 years. So those innovations are happening day in and day out at the studios. And it's about how do we get those innovations out and put them into the right product and have them have the greatest level of appeal across the market.
Great, great. All right, so let's continue on. Well, it's kind of a related question, but how big a role do content creators play in the 3x scaling of users on your platforms?
So I think what, and I'm not sure if it's Shant, but
yeah.
I think the question is really about people who stream content and people who create user-generated content. And if it is, that would be great to know. And if it is, my answer would be they are part of the marketing of our game. They're part of exposing large audiences to their audiences, and they're an important part of scaling users for sure, because they're experts and they have a level of passion, and bringing that passion to an audience helps people get engaged and be interested in it.
Great. Short-term question, but important one. How is the chip shortage affecting your business?
So the reality is that the chip shortage is probably having the greatest impact on console manufacturers. So Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo are having trouble meeting demand. And as new platforms come out, as they have in the last 24 months, you'd like to see them be able to satisfy demand to maximize that opportunity. But they're clearly having some issues in that way. And but it'll happen over time and it'll be okay. But that's probably the largest impact in the industry.
Great. Do you think Play to Earn, crypto gaming, let's get into the hot topics, the buzzwords of the buzz topics of the times, you know, the role of blockchain and crypto and gaming. Any vision and any thoughts? You can tell anything about what Activision is doing, but otherwise, any broad thoughts about this?
So I think the space is fascinating. I think the work that's going on in the space, whether it's on the currency side or on the art side or on the music side, is all pretty interesting. I think there are always going to be platforms and business models that come into the marketplace. The most important thing for us in the way we think about these things is how is it additive to a gaming experience? How is it added to the franchise and to the IP? And if we can get to a place where we can answer that as yes, it's additive and it's immersive and it's helpful, the business probably becomes pretty interesting for us. And if we can't, then we probably stay away from it. And we've seen things, you know, we haven't really gone into AR and VR as an example, because we don't yet see scale in those markets. We're not usually on the bleeding edge. We're usually fast followers. And so, look, personally, I think it's super interesting. I have a 22-year-old son who is very interested in it, and we spend a fair bit of time talking about it. But you know, as it relates to the business, it has to make sense.
Right. Right, and we're going through that in a lot of our classes at Pepperdine. Like, what's the future? What is the future of blockchain and what it holds for different industries? Along those same lines, then, I'm talking about hot topics. A question from Kyle: at this point in time, how do you view sports, or how does Activision view sports, and in the competitive gaming landscape?
It's an important part of our business today. We've founded 2 leagues with the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League, and we've put it together with some of the greatest sports owners in the world who own these teams and who are committed to creating competitive city-based gaming that gets fans engaged and gets teams playing teams and and shows an expertise level in gaming that is it's incredible. And I think in the U.S. we're at the beginning, and I think we're at the beginning of this, and it's going to take some time to grow and develop, and it's going to take some time to mature. But at the early stages, it's a really interesting space, and we continue to work through it.
Great. So lots of great questions around hot topics. Let's see if there's any others on that. No. So let's go back to competitive strategy. So from Eric, we've seen Sony and Microsoft eating up smaller studios for their console exclusives. And if you can describe what that phenomenon means for those who are not familiar, and then how does Activision keep up with these huge corporations in the gaming space?
Sorry, can you say that again? I couldn't hear you, Nelson.
Oh, so we've seen Sony and Microsoft eating up smaller studios for their console exclusives. How does Activision keep up with these huge corporations in the gaming space?
I think that this is all about IP, and there's a combination of IP development and IP ownership. I think some of the small studios are really interesting buys, and we just actually announced the purchase of one a couple of weeks ago called Digital Legends out of Barcelona, that are working on a mobile project for us over the next couple of years. And look, I think that content is king in these businesses, and really talented teams there aren't a ton of them, and so we're all going to look at new teams that come to the market with new concepts and new ideas, and and we'll all have our place at evaluating that talent and thinking about how they fit into our organizations. But it's also really important to create an environment for the talent that you have to create and develop IP and new games and new modes, and that allows them to want to stay and be inspired.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that's perhaps a good lead into perhaps not so easy question, which is that Blizzard is struggling with culture, creativity, and leadership. And how is the company dealing with these issues?
Look, making games isn't an easy process, and every day we really like the idea of making sure that the teams are doing well, and we work with them. It's not always easy, and leadership isn't always easy, and running big organizations isn't always easy. Their fan base really loves to play their games at Blizzard, really loves it, and producing content for that fan base is hugely important. There's been some changes over there, for sure, and they're not always easy. But day in and day out, the company's committed to the teams there, and wants to see them make their best games and put their best foot forward with their community. And honestly, I think that's the day in, day out challenge across all of the businesses, is how do you really get teams working together, collaborating to produce their best work? And sometimes it really works great, and other times not always.
Mm-hmm. Great. So listen, I'm gonna wrap up our conversation. Then I'm just gonna throw out a whole series of questions that may seem unrelated, just because I'm just gonna go down the list. But the last sort of questions to wrap up our conversation are describe your role as COO in this whole creative process and of creating and monetizing games. Describe that role. Also, if you can share a little bit about how you succeed across different roles, because I see you've had executive roles in finance, in supply chain strategy. There's a question about how you succeeding across different companies. So any thoughts on your role and how you succeed as you progress along the different roles?
Sure. So first of all, I would say that I've been really lucky and fortunate. One piece of advice I would give is, as you're looking at new roles, really look for places that are growing. growth creates a lot of opportunity. So I think that's first. I think the second piece is be willing to try new things. I've been lucky enough to be thrown into a lot of deep ends of things that I don't understand or don't know that well. But I've said yes when they've been offered, and then worked incredibly hard along the way to learn and to learn from colleagues and from bosses and from people on my team when I've inherited teams that had more expertise than I have. But that hard work piece is really important. And I don't think we talk about it enough, frankly, because, you know, there are 10,000 people roughly at Activision, and, you know, they're all working and they're all doing good work. And so how do you separate yourself, and how do you do great work, and how do you, you know, go above and beyond, and how do you contribute and add value? As I said at the beginning, it takes some luck also. It takes some luck to see opportunities and to understand what they are, and to get offered them. From crossing industries, you know, I think the key for me, you know, wine, toys, internet, gaming, has been that I've always been able to figure out building relationships with people I work with, and then when they go elsewhere, that I'm interested in finding ways to get back in touch and network. I will tell you that for 16 years, I've probably not been the best networker. I will tell you, if I had to go back 20 years, I would network significantly more than I have over my career, and I would recommend it. And then for new disciplines, you know, you really just got to learn. The truth is, none of it is, I mean, look, nobody's putting me in a development job where I have to develop games and code, because I don't know how to do that. But when you generally manage a business, you have to run a P&L. And when you move into a CFO role in a division, you run a P&L. And so as you understand the different components of each of the jobs that you do, you start to be able to lead organizations and lead people, which I think is the last piece. You got to be kind. You got to treat people with dignity and respect. You got to treat people with high ethical standards and integrity. And, you know, communicate really well. Because at the end of the day, you realize you get to a scale in your role where you can't do it all. You need really good people around you to do most of what gets done. And people work harder for people they trust and people who they believe have their back and are supportive of them. And so I think that's a hugely important part of the journey.
Wow. Well, that was a very packed answer with lots of good advice, different kinds of advice for the students. So at this point, I'm just going to go down some of the list of questions that I haven't posed yet. What about this one? Do you acquire IPs or talents, and what drives the decision whether to acquire them or whether to nurture them inside the organization? I think that's what that question means.
We acquire both. We acquire, you know, the Digital Legends was a talent acquisition, not an IP acquisition. When we bought King in 2016, it was an IP acquisition along with talent, right? So it was Candy Crush and a whole host of other games, but Candy Crush was their largest. But it was also a 2,000 person organization. And so the answer is you acquire both of those things. You know, IP is a wonderful thing when you get it right, and but talent is too. And so you just got to figure out what you're looking for and what need you need to meet. The talent acquisition we just made was for a specific thing that they have a tremendous amount of expertise in, and so it fit perfectly.
Okay, all right, value and fit. Maybe. All right. Question from Michaela. Netflix recently acquired a video game studio and has rolled out mobile games. How does Activision view these strategic moves? And do you believe SVOD platforms have the potential to become competitive in this space?
I think I'm not going to talk specifically about Netflix because I try and stay away from competitors. I think it's really difficult for new organizations to enter gaming that don't have gaming-based DNA. Amazon's been at it for a while, as an example. They just released an MMO that's done pretty well, but it's taken a good solid decade. And a lot of companies come in and out of it. Facebook's come in and out of it. It's hard. And you need, we started talking about the developers. You need developers who make great content. That's where it all starts. They have an amazing distribution platform at Netflix. We saw the user base on the previous slide, but they're going to have to find core DNA in making games because at the core of it, fans really want to play great games.
Mm. Well, now that you mentioned DNA, it occurs to me, I wanted to ask you, tell us about the DNA of Activision, Blizzard, and King, and how it affects the strategy of your company.
Look, I think there's a really interesting thing that is unique to Activision Blizzard, which is all three of the divisions were started by an individual. So Activision was bought out of bankruptcy in 1989 by Bobby Kotick, who's still a CEO 31 years later. And his partner, Brian Kelly, is still on our board. In 2013, we bought Blizzard, which was started by a gentleman by the name of Mike Morheim in 1992 at UCLA. And then Riccardo Zacconi created King in the early 2000s, and we bought them in 2016. So to have three entrepreneurs who really have created businesses that scale beyond $10 billion is unique. And they each have their own cultures. They each develop for, really, King is about mobile and at its core about puzzle games. Blizzard is about PC at its core. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist on other platforms, but World of Warcraft and fantasy. And Activision is at its core Guitar Hero and Skylanders and Call of Duty, but for consoles and then PC. And so the DNA has been pretty deep and specific with those businesses. And now we're trying to really learn from each other and figure out how to do things better. You'll see Call of Duty on Battle.net as an example, where their platform is what hosts our games. And we're trying to learn from each other to be better at each of the skills that the other have developed in a really positive way.
Great. So some kind of entrepreneurial DNA. Is that fair?
100%.
All right, got it. Question from Ilya: would gaming step into education space anytime soon? I'm very dear to this question since I'm in education. So any thoughts on that?
Look, it has over time. It's come and go, come and went, or come and gone. When I was at Vivendi in 2001 through 2003, we had a game division called Jumpstart, which were educational PC games. And there have been a number of them over the years. There is definitely some military training that happens in games from an educational standpoint. And look, I think when people learn their best is when they're most engaged. And so I think if people really can figure out how to engage with fun in learning, it'll be a really successful model. And I think we've seen that over time, but we haven't seen it really grow and develop for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any particular vision on areas of education where gaming has a lot of potential, or the gamification of learning?
Look, I think math is probably the one that comes most to mind quickly. But the other part of this is, as you look at high school educations, computer science needs to be an integral part of an education process. And so learning to code games is learning to code. And learning to code is a super important part of the world that we're growing into. If you go think about the slide you held up in the corners, there's $8 trillion of market caps of people who need a lot of coders and who will continue to need more and more coders. And so how you do that in a way that's engaging I have 3 kids and one of them 16. I'd like to see things that are more, I'd like to see education evolve at the pace that the economy is evolving and that businesses are evolving.
Great. All right, question. Do you have a strategy to transition current Roblox users or younger gamers to Activision? And do you think that is an opportunity for more mature gaming companies to go after?
I think it's a really good question. I think people are coming into gaming in all sorts of different ways. And I think how you graduate into deeper and deeper experiences is certainly something that has to be important. I don't think it's specific to Roblox, but I think it's, what's the first thing you do as a gamer and how do you grow from there? And then what do you do after that? And how do you think about the age of acquiring new users and what you put in front of them for offers? We have some games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, King's Quest and others that are games for all ages. And those are competitors to some of the games that exist on the Roblox platform. So I think the point of like, how do you think about the graduating of gamers to more and more, I won't say core, but probably complex games is a really good question. And it's something we think about.
Great. Do you think the new Call of Duty Vanguard is the best one yet?
The new one is always the best one. No, look, they're like children. You love them all equally. It's an excellent game, and the passion and creativity that went into making that game is second to none. And the team is a phenomenal group of people who brought everything they had into that game. And it's only going to get better in the next couple of weeks as we launch the first new chapter of Warzone, and you start to see, Vanguard integrated with it, and so there's a lot more to come. But I think the game's phenomenal.
Great.
That was an easy one though, so thanks.
Yeah, there you go. Thoughts on skill-based matchmaking? Not sure what that means.
I'm going to pass on that one.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Look, I understand the question, and but I think it's a lot of detail for a broad audience that probably won't understand a lot of the back and forth in it. So I'm just going to pass. Great. But thank you for asking.
All right. What roles helped you most in getting you to where you are now?
Look, I really aspired to be a GM. That's what I started out. I really wanted to generally manage a business. I wanted to be the person who owned every part of the P&L and every part of the delivery and the business result, and motivated the team. And that for me, when I got to do it on Skylanders, which was really the most pure GM role, was probably the role that influenced my ability to do the CFO role and the COO role, and other future roles to come. And so I love that part of it, because you deal with, product creation, you deal with how you get the product to market, you deal with the marketing of the product, you deal with the strategy of what you make next, you deal with the financials, so the cost of goods and all of the inputs that go into the P&L. You have a target that you really set for yourself to achieve, and then you have to deliver against it. And then you get things like with Skylanders, and by the way, and I'm not sure who it was, but the note about their brother playing Skylanders was super sweet. And your brother wasn't alone in that. We've received tons of notes like that. We've done support with Make-A-Wish Foundation on Skylanders. And so there was a lot of love in young people, and parents who got to play with young people, or brothers who got to play with their younger brother on that. But as competition started to come into the world, with Disney and Lego, you start to have to really think about how you do things differently. And as platforms develop, do you participate in those platform developments? And for me, that was it was the whole product being the challenge that was the best part, and probably has set me up for the things that I want to do more of in the future.
Great. We have I'm going to say go 2 last questions, and we have 3 minutes. So if you can limit it to 1 minute per question. Thoughts on current esports landscape of current Activision titles?
I think we talked about it honestly. With we have the 2 leagues with Call of Duty and Overwatch. They're city-based leagues. There was a comment in that are they having a tough time? They are in the infancy of their growth, and building new sports leagues is not a simple thing. But we continue to see more and more engagement and people interested in the space, and we're going to continue to focus on it.
So you see more as ups and downs as it scales up?
Look, I think anything new is going to have its challenges. We're plowing new fields, and as we do that, we're really going to go through it in a way that has challenges, and we're going to have to overcome them along the way.
Great. Last question. Tons of questions. I appreciate the audience for being so engaged. We're getting to our last question. If you could send a letter to your former self, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your 1999 self?
It's a good one. First, I'd say don't take things personally. It doesn't mean don't be vested in results and outcomes and journeys, but it means like give it your best, do the best work, but don't take everything personally. That would be one of the things I would tell myself. I'd tell myself that spend as much time with your kids and your wife as you can, because those days and moments are precious, and when you think everything can't get done, it still gets done. And then I would say enjoy it, because it goes fast. And you hear, I'll call myself an old person, you hear old people say that, and you don't know what it means when you're young. But as you start to get older, you realize time goes quick, and choose really good people to work with, choose growing places, spend time with people you trust and you like, and do your best work along the way.
Well, maybe there's a saying that's very appropriate for this conversation to end things up, which is work hard, play hard, right? In many of its dimensions. Is that fair?
It absolutely is fair.
All right, Josh. Well, we have come to the end. You're starting to receive thank yous from the audience, and I just want to say thank you for coming to share with us your experience, your wisdom, a lot of great advice for the students. And I just want to end with just reading what Kyle wrote, because I think it's very meaningful. Along the notions of work hard, play hard, it is all about business, but business brings good things, and you should, as you said, you should leave time to be or become happy. And so I'll just end with this note, and then we'll close it. Kyle said, not a question, but just want to say thank you. When my baby brother was in the children's hospital with a severe blood disease, chemo, and quarantine, we played Skylanders for hours, and it truly helped him make it through the difficult time. Thank you for making the games that help people. So
that's awesome.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate the time. Have a nice weekend.